Hello, welcome to this webinar on call center scheduling. During the last webinar, there was a question. We asked what is good job subject for next time, and quite a number of people asked for scheduling. So that's what we're going to do today. Welcome, my name is Ger Koole. I'm the founder and chief scientist of CCmath, and I'm going to present this webinar about call center or contact center scheduling. So what are the goals of this webinar? Well, if we want to make schedules and we want to, it said in the title, make an efficient call center schedule, then we have to define what is efficient. And more generally, what is a good schedule? And we want to come up with a method and a quantitative method to find these schedules. And then you have to be able to measure also whether a schedule is good or not. So we want to quantify. We first want to define when is a schedule good. We want to quantify it. We want to measure it. And as soon as we get that, we can come up with a method and then try to find the best possible schedule given our KPI that we define. So first I'm going to focus a little bit on when is a schedule good or not, and then we're really diving into the more technical stuff about how to make schedules. So when is a schedule good? As some people, there are different definitions of workforce management in contact centers, but often they involve something like scheduling the right number of people at the right time. Yes, and of course, if you schedule the wrong number of people at a certain time, then there's under or overstaffing. So scheduling the right people at the right time apparently means that you avoid understaffing and avoid overstaffing. Now, if you have understaffing, then you have not enough agents. Agents are not happy because they have to work very hard, and still the service level, you cannot reach it. So understaffing leads both to, well, dissatisfied agents because they have a very high occupancy, and at the same time, understaffing leads to a bad service level. So if you avoid understaffing, then that's good for your service level. On the other hand, if you have overstaffing and of course low occupancy, perhaps your agents are happy with that, but on the other hand, it costs you more than necessary. So you want to avoid overstaffing because that costs you money because of the low occupancy. You're hiring and you're paying agents who you don't need. So now the problem with scheduling is that in general you cannot avoid under or overstaffing. I'm assuming a call center with inbound calls, and there shifts. Of course, you have different requirements per interval, and perhaps your shifts are 8-hour shifts or 4-hour shifts or 6-hour shifts. They are inflexible, so you cannot fully follow your required staffing levels due to the inflexibility of shifts. Yes? And so under and overstaffing are not completely unavoidable. So you have to make a trade-off between the under and overstaffing. Do I add more agents to avoid the understaffing, but at the cost of more overstaffing, or vice versa? And often you see that people prefer a bit more overstaffing than understaffing. You prefer a few more agents, but to avoid these periods of very low service level. But again, that depends on the call center and what you have. In this webinar, and that is not because I'm saying that this is the right choice, but this is mainly for technical, to make the analysis that's going to follow a bit simpler. Extensions are possible, but well, technically more involved. So we're going to focus on the situation where we do not allow for any understaffing. So we're going to meet the service level in any interval during the day. And then we're going to try to minimize, under this condition, we're going to try to minimize the overstaffing. Yes, so we're going to meet the service level every interval, and then we're going for the and we're trying to minimize the overstaffing. As I said, this is just one trade-off and a bit of an extreme trade-off because we avoid this this understaffing completely. Another way of measuring things that will report as well in the what I'm going to show, but a more general definition that you see sometimes is what people call schedule efficiency, and that is that counts over and under staffing in the same way. So that is the required staffing and what you need to reach your service level. And then you add to that both what you're under and overstaffed. And then you divide by the total required staff. Yeah, so that we'll call schedule efficiency. So they're over and understaffed are equally weighted. You can also think of other forms where, for example, understaffing is more expensive than overstaffing. So you came up with something like weighted schedule efficiency. You might say, why do you need that? Well, in the optimization we're going to show, that might be helpful because then the algorithm automatically chooses the trade-off you want to have. But again, this quickly gets quite technical. We only have 45 minutes. Of course, if you these are more advanced techniques than what I'm just going to show in this short webinar. Okay, so much about how to measure the quality of a schedule. What you see here is a screenshot of the Excel sheet. It's actually online, Microsoft 365 that I'm going to show you. I have these here as a backup, but what I'll try to do is show it to you online with a bit the risk of showing, well, doing a demo or a bit more than a demo, really doing things real time. But let's see if this works. So let's switch to my browser, which is here. Okay, so now you see my browser and you see a sheet, and what you see here is actually the demand side of a certain day in a call center. So what you see here is our forecast from 9 in the morning to 9 in the evening. Let's just have a quick look at how this graph looks like. So what you see is nicely smooth. Yes, if ever you see a forecast for a day and you see lots of peaks going up and down every 15 or 30 minutes, then you know for sure this is what we call overfitting. Yes, this is not going to happen. This graph, it should go up and down a bit. So like here is a lunch break, and apparently around well, at the end of the afternoon there's the highest peak. These things can happen, but it's pretty smooth. So that looks okay. Yes, so that is the forecast. And here per half hour, the amount of calls that is forecasted. We have a constant average handling time of 5 minutes, 300 seconds. And now here in gray are a number of calculations to come to the required staffing. So what you see here, this is just as a reference also to see if our numbers make sense. But what I did here is I calculated the load for every interval. Now, sometimes you can calculate load in numbers of hours that you need to schedule agents. That's often done in capacity management. You compute the full load, and then you add, of course, certain percentages to it, but you compute how many hours do I need in a certain week, well, next year, for example. Now here, I'm not doing that. I'm calculating the load in terms of the numbers of agents that I need every half hour here. Of course, it's easily to transfer one in the other, but this is, let's say, the number of agents that you really need to be sitting on the phone at every moment during this half hour to make sure that you can handle the load in that half hour. So that is the forecast, and then we do that. We bring everything back to minutes. So what you do, and you can see the formula. You take the forecast, you divide by 30, so that's the number of calls per minute. You take the average handling time, you divide by 30, so that's the time it takes in minutes, and then you multiply both, and then you know how many agents you need. And as you can see, well, it's almost 20 in this interval. Of course, I copied these formulas. Then the next cell, now we're going to translate that into required staffing and net required staffing, net workforce. And for that, we use the Erlang formula. And what does Erlang? What is the use of Erlang? I won't go into a lot of detail. We have separate webinars and trainings on Erlang if you're really interested in all the details. But calls arrive not equally spaced. There is some randomness involved. Also, the handling times are not all 300 seconds. They are on average 300 seconds. Sometimes they are longer, sometimes they are shorter. To be able to work away fluctuations in workload, you need more staffing than just the load. And that is what the Erlang formula calculates. And what I did here, I loaded our own Erlang add-in here, our own Erlang calculator, and then I called the function. And just simple. There are multiple features, and here I didn't do readouts or I didn't do patience, but again, if you're interested in Erlang, there are other webinars on our site you can learn, from which you can learn all the details about Erlang. But the 0.8 is actually service level. We require an 80% service level. This last number, 20 over 60, is that you should answer in 20 seconds, and 20 over 60 is that in minutes. And then there's here the forecast divided by 30 and the average handling time divided by 60 to make everything minutes. And then the Erlang formula tells you, you saw it was calculating a fraction, it was recalculating it, but it is actually, so you need not 19.6, but almost 24 agents to work away the workload. Now there's another detail, and that is the shrinkage. Now some shrinkage is not part of this plan because holidays and perhaps illness are already out. But agents take breaks and perhaps have unplanned meetings, these type of things. Let's assume that that part of the internal shrinkage, as it's sometimes called, is 10%. So we have to add 10%. And well, to do it in the right way, you should divide by 1 minus 10%. Yes, and that's what it says here. And then you end up with a gross required staffing, a gross workforce of 26.6. So that is what is required. Yes, and that is all Erlang. And again, if you want to know more about it, go look at other webinars or follow one of our trainings. But that is not today's subject. Today's subject is at the demand side, not at the demand, but at the supply side. And let's have a look at it. So what is the supply side? Well, it's actually the right-hand part of this Excel sheet. And what do we have here? Let's first focus on this part. What you see here in gray are schedules. And I'm assuming here full-time shifts, like they are standard here in the Netherlands, 4 hours of work, half an hour break, lunch break, 4 hours of work. So this here, the one I selected, is the shift that starts at 9 o'clock and then it takes 8.5 hours and finishes at 5:30. And then we have all the shifts that fall within the 9 to 9 time frame. Yes. Okay. What's on top here in yellow is my decision that I'm ultimately making. I'm going to decide about how many agents I'm scheduling. And here in yellow, that is my staffing levels. So here, 30 agents do the first shift, 5 agents do the third shift, etc. So that translates itself into numbers of agents per interval. Um, so here, for example, these 30 agents, yeah, so that is, of course, this 30, and this 41 is 30 plus 11, because the first and the second shift work in the second interval. Because there's a 0 here or nothing actually, this 5 shouldn't be counted for the interval that starts at 9:30. So the formula behind here, and many of you will be familiar with that. If you're a bit handy in Excel, you probably know that. But this is the sum product formula. So you multiply this yellow vector range with the corresponding range here, and then you get these numbers. Yes? Okay. And given a certain schedule, and let's take a bit of this schedule has no let's take 20 here, why not? And then here perhaps remove this. And what you see here is that this schedule, I have two things. I have here the as I said, the staffing, and then this is simply the sum of the number of agents. And here below, I have a small formula. I just compare this number and that number, and then depending which one is bigger, I print either one here or there. So it's simple formula. But this reports whether there's under and overstaffing. And here, the schedule efficiency, which I just defined, this number is, well, as we said, the required staffing minus the sum of under and overstaffing divided by this here. So here we have, for example, a schedule with a schedule efficiency of 72%. Now, what is the next step? What we would like to do is use an algorithm, because this is a simple example, and our objective was to find the schedule, that that avoids understaffing, but minimize the number of agents. Now we can do that, of course, by hand, as I did before. Okay, so if I add, well, I'm doing something super stupid, because I have a lot of overstaffing right now, but I can make by hand, of course. I can try it, and actually this is super simple example. Probably by hand you can find the best possible schedule, but we're looking for a method to do this automatically. And let's go back to the presentation. There is a mathematical theory behind that. There is a whole theory about optimization, and that's what I'm shortly going to discuss now before we go back to Excel. This theory, one of the founders of this theory is this person here, an American scientist who wrote optimization problems in a certain form and then developed an algorithm to solve it. And what is nice, as we'll see in a minute, this algorithm is actually available in Excel. And the general form of these type of optimization problems is that you have a number of decision variables that you can vary, that you have some objective, you have some KPI that you want to minimize or sometimes maximize, which is the same, it's just minus the other, but let's focus on minimization. But you also have certain constraints. You cannot do very weird things. There are certain constraints, limitations you have to adhere to. And in the example we are discussing today, the call center example, you can vary the number of agents per shift. The yellow numbers that were in the Excel sheet. You want to minimize the total number of agents. Yes, because then at the same time you minimize the required the overstaffing. Yes, because the required staffing is constant. So here simply we're going to minimize the total number of agents, and we do want that the service level constraint, the 80/20 that we used in the Erlang, that is met. So that means that we want to stick to the. We want to stick to this number that was in the end the gross staffing number. Yes, so we want to to make sure that we have sufficient agents. Okay, and what we're going to do is again back to the Excel sheet. Again, this is my backup slide. And I might need it because we're going to use some other software that you can see here, which is called the Solver. And actually, this solver is a bit buggy in the online version of Microsoft. There are way stronger solvers, and if you have your own, I'm working on a Mac, so that then Excel doesn't have full functionality. But if you have a local version of Excel, this solver usually works well. And there are many other. This is a free solver, which is nice that it's available. But there are many other free solvers and also paid solvers that are way better than this one. But let's have a look at that. So let's move again to the Excel sheet. Okay. So now you're seeing hopefully my Excel sheet again. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use another add-in. I just used the Erlang add-in, which is also available here, but I'm going to use another add-in, which is the solver. Of course, if you never used it, then you have to install it first. If you don't know how to, you can find instructions online. Should not be too difficult. Okay, let's go to this solver. And we're going to do exactly the things we had to do. So we have to set constraints, objective, and variables. And here it says, let's start with the objective. Why not? So the objective, as we said, was minimizing the number of agents. Yeah, so on purpose, of course, I made this sum of agents here, which is simply, as you can see here on the top, is nothing else than the sum of what's here in yellow. Yes. Okay, we want to minimize that. Yes. By the way, you see here, actually, this is already the solution. So we're going to change that. Well, let's remove something, then we'll see. Let's change something, then we'll see what it does. Okay, the variables. So these are the yellow ones. Yeah. So we have to say add, and now click, and then we can add the variables like this. Okay, and that is okay. These are all the variables. So far, so good. And we have to add the constraints. And I'm going to add here. So what is the constraint? Well, the constraint is that here we have this gross staffing, and that should be less, and the right relation is already there, than the number of agents scheduled. And actually, I know that we need another one, and that one is that the agent numbers are integer numbers. They are not broken numbers. I have to add that one as well. Now, for some reason, this one appears twice, perhaps because I already used it. So, oh, delete here. I'm deleting one. I'm deleting this one. So this looks okay. Now I know, and you can here click to diagnose, but I know that this is a so-called linear problem. Yeah, LP. The L stands for linear, and simplex is this method that Danzig invented back in the 50s. Yes. So you can also automatically select engine. My experience is try simplex. Yes, if you model things in the wrong way with if statements, etc., you will see that it goes wrong. And we will post this sheet next to the webinar, so you can try it yourself completely in the same way by copying what I did. But again, if you need more complicated to solve more complicated problems, then quickly you need a bit more experience, and using the solver in all the ways in which it's possible. That's really something you learn if you take certain courses at university. We also have a bit in our trainings, and we help you get really further with solving these type of problems. But if you want to know everything about these solvers, then you really need a bachelor or a master in mathematics or industrial engineering, something like this. But of course, it is the bread and butter of companies who make workforce planning tools, like CCmath, but also all the other companies out there. Okay, now let's see to try if it works. Again, I have slides for backup, but let's see if it gives us an answer in a couple of seconds. It posts this problem for some solver on the web. Hey, and look at that, it worked. Yes, it says here at the bottom, solver add-in found the solution, all constraints and conditions are satisfied. And indeed, it gives, well, the answer how we started with. I changed it, but you see. And there's a shift. We see no understaffing, so we did a good job. At the same time, we see this shift efficiency of 62%. And that means that we have about half of more than half of the required staffing more scheduled just because of the inflexibility of our shift. So that is really a low number. And think about it, if you do capacity planning and you have a shift, well, if you have a shift inefficiency, 100 minus this number of 20%, that means that you should schedule 20% more people unless you have other ways to, well, solve this inefficiency. Yeah? But at a certain level of shift inefficiency, hopefully not 20%, is unavoidable, and that is something you shouldn't forget when making your calculations. So let's. So how can you improve this? Well. There are different ways. We're going to talk about them in a second. But one way I would like to show you right now, and that is our my last sheet. And that is actually by introducing part-time shift. Part of, if you would plot the gross required staffing and scheduling, but you can see it here as well. There's a lot of overstaffing in the middle because that's where all the full-time shifts overlap. So by introducing some part-time shifts, it might well be the case that we avoid this huge overstaffing. And that is my last slide, this one here. Let's not run the solver and everything again, but let me just explain what it says here. So I have here the same full-time shifts here. But I added here 3 part-time shifts. Yes, and well, you could add more of them. I just added 3 that cover the whole day. And here part-time shift is 4 hours. Of course, now the part-time shifts, you cannot just count the number of agents. Yeah, so now I count the number of hours here, and of course, the full-time shifts are 8 hours, the part-time shifts are 4 hours. You could say, well, is a part-time shift half the cost of a full-time shift? Perhaps not. Perhaps part-time agents have more overhead. So instead of in this formula using 8 and 4, I should perhaps use 8 and 4.5. These are all extensions that you can do. Yes, but right now it's just to illustrate that there is a solution with part-time agents, quite a number of part-time agents. Again, if you change this 4 to 4.5, perhaps you get a more balanced solution. But what we do see is that by introducing these part-time shifts, the shift efficiency goes up from 62 to 89. So really part-time shifts helps here. And this is really, well, one of the examples of things you can do. And with this type of tooling, it really gives you insight, not only that part-time shifts help, but also to what extent. And indeed, what we see is that call centers using this type of ideas are really managed to come up with with really solutions to improve their operation. So let's go back to the presentation. PowerPoint. So this is what we. So let's finish with let's wrap up with talking about what are the consequences. What can you do with this type of tooling? As I said, I just showed you the most simple application of using this solver to make schedules, but there are many more possibilities. Some possibilities that are, well, that could be done within Excel is to change the objective. I already said that's super simple, allow for different costs per shift type. If you want to allow for understaffing and, for example, minimize the shift, maximize the shift efficiency and minimize the shift inefficiency. If you want to do that, well, that's a bit more involved. Then you need some trick to, well, to keep things linear, actually. If you work with if statements, then you cannot use this linear solver anymore. And these other solvers are usually not that successful in finding the best solution, but you can try it. But if you can use this linear solver, but then you need some smart tricks. And for that, to explain that, I don't have the time today. But you need some smart tricks to get that working. You could also think of including other types of activities. You can avoid the shift efficiency, for example, by mail. If you have to handle mail during the day, and your agents can also handle these mails, these are the same agents. Then and your mail will have to be answered in 4, perhaps 8 hours. Then of course you can schedule this mail at the moment that you don't need the agents for the inbound, but they are scheduled due to this the inflexibility of the shifts. So that's also ways to avoid this low shift efficiency. So that can really help here. Instead of we use the Erlang for inbound, we also have an Erlang formula for chat. You can even blend mail and inbound, and then at the moment that your agents according to the inbound do the overstaffing, then because of the blending, agents will do more mails, and same tooling also report how many mails. So then you can say, okay, I have enough agents to do my inbound, and then thanks to the blending, you can see if altogether they also do enough emails. And that all can be included in an Excel sheet, as I just showed to you. Other scheduling possibilities that might be relevant to you, but that are outside of the scope of such an Excel sheet. You need different technologies, but definitely possible are things like going to the weekly level. It perhaps can still be done in Excel, but you probably get a big Excel sheet with very long shifts, with all kinds of not only the hours of the day, but also the days of the week. So that quickly gets complicated. Skills-based routing, where you have some agents that have certain skills, but not all the skills, is a bit more, that is something that typically you need to use a technique called simulation. You cannot use Erlang anymore. Erlang is really only appropriate for single skill operations. So if you have multi-skill operations, then you need other tooling, which goes beyond an Excel sheet with the Erlang plugin and the solver. You can also think of agent level scheduling, and many call centers, if you do scheduling at the agent level, agents have personal preferences, they have their own meetings planned, and etc., etc., etc. That way gets, well, if it's still somewhat simple in a small call center, perhaps you can do it in Excel. But if you have a full-size call center with all the different situations and preferences of all the agents, then you really need other tooling. And if you want to schedule meetings for multiple people and you want to do that in an automatic way such that it fits the service level requirements, that makes things also more complicated, requiring well, more advanced tooling. Going towards my last slide, this is my last slide, a little bit about, all right, 3 more slides, won't take long. So why would you, what can you do with this type of tooling? One thing is evaluate design changes. Suppose you want to change your opening hours, then of course you have to find a forecast for these new opening hours. But you can see, hey, what are the consequences for my shifts? Which type of shifts should I have, etc. And something comparable is capacity planning. Suppose you need to hire new agents for next year. So you're thinking, hey, which type of agents are best given my current pool, and which and I know examples of call centers where, due to the type of tooling we just discussed, that they said, okay, we should hire part-time agents that are willing to work in the early evening, for example, to make sure we can cover our requirements. What you could also do, suppose you're working for a BPO and you get a request from a potential new customer, and they give you certain specs like what is the load you can expect, forecast, etc. And then you have to think, okay, how many agents do I need for that project to prepare a proposal? And then this type of tooling can definitely help you with that. Of course, another application, and then it's within a workforce scheduling tool that many of you will definitely have. Of course, there is a scheduling engine in it that does something, of course, more complicated than I just showed, but it does something similar to what I just showed you. And I think that, and that's not always done, and I challenge you to try that with your own tooling, or think about it. What is the schedule efficiency of the schedules that you are using? Did you ever try to calculate that, and how can that be improved? I think that's a question that not many WFMers, WFM professionals ask themselves. But I do think it's a very valid question. One slide about CCmath tooling. We have at CCmath a number of tools in which these type of things is implemented. Of course, you could do exactly what I just showed you with your own data, and perhaps try to extend it, so you can work with the Erlang add-in and then combine that with a free solver. I showed you how that works in Excel. You can do that locally on your own computer, but we also have interfaces with Python and R programming languages. And then, of course, you can use this Erlang X that I showed, but also use the tooling for chat or blending. We have a more advanced tool that is more advanced in the sense that it can handle very general multi-skill, multi-channel situations. There is, well, way more complicated tooling than the solver under the hood, and that does week level shift scheduling for really call centers that you can make as complicated as you want to have complicated operations. As I said, multi-skill and multi-channel. And definitely, if you want to do like these BPOs, preparing proposals in a multi-skill or multi-channel situation, then you will need tooling like this one. And then finally, we have an engine which is called Decima, and that is under the hood of our own scheduling application, which is really we think a beautiful SaaS application that does scheduling in all its generality, multi-skill, multi-schedule, etc. Okay, the last slide. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, that you liked the technical content, and that you learned something from that. If you want to know more about one of our products, you can contact us. You can always send a message to info or to Jesper right away. Jesper is our marketeer. If you're interested in a more technical discussion, hey, of course, Jesper can make sure that we can arrange a demo for you, or he can direct you to the right person. But if you say, hey, I have some challenges and I really want to have a chat with one of the technical people, I really love to learn about your challenges and have a discussion about that. And we have other people like Bas, one of our senior consultants, who's also involved in helping potential new customers. So if you're interested, if you have challenges and you want to know if we can help you or just have a chat about that, you can book a slot with us, and we're very happy to talk to you. This ends this webinar. Our next webinar is scheduled for April 16, same time. If you have a subject, send me a message on LinkedIn or by mail and for a possible subject. And in due time, you will, of course, get the announcement for that webinar. And please don't hesitate to go to our website and have a look around at what other webinars and other resources we have. And well, if you want to know more, just drop us a line. Thanks very much for your attention, and hope to see you next time. Have a nice day.